Hey, kia ora, Helen Brahms here, coming to you live from Surprise in Arizona. Hope you're having a super fantastic, sparkling day. Welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast number 1755. We can cross that one off too. It's now o'clock. What have you been putting off to someday, or these are my dreams? What ones have you been putting off and not taking action on to make them come true, and why? It's now o'clock. It's time to get started. So one of the bags I brought back from San Diego with me was a large suitcase. And in this large suitcase, I knew I had clothes in there, which I had sorted through November last year. And I couldn't remember which clothes were in there. So yesterday I unpacked this. I finally unpacked the suitcase, and because I got more hangers, so I could hang stuff up. And that was one reason why it wasn't unpacked, because I had nowhere to put the clothes. But my order of hangers arrived yesterday, so now I have somewhere to put them. And so I'm pulling out stuff, and there was shirts in there from cruises I have been on. There was a whole bunch of cruise planner shirts that we had, and way back. I mean, we've been in the business of cruise planners now for over 15 years, and so when we first got started, is that we wanted to wear more stuff with cruise planners on, wear it while you're out walking and things like that. And so we bought different types of polo shirt. I bought a whole bunch of different polo shirts, different colors and everything. Brad got these really nice casual button-down shirts, the type with the square base across the bottom that you leave untucked. So the casual ones, really nice ones too. And we got them embroidered with the Cruise Planners logo on them. When Brad passed, his shirts, I actually put a call out to the other Cruise Planner franchise owners and said, these are the size these shirts are. They're free to a good home. Who wants it? It's first come, first served. And so they actually ended up going to somebody who could wear them and utilize them. And they very much enjoyed them because they're very comfortable button-down shirts. And the ones that don't have the button at the neck collar, they've got open neck and all of that sort of stuff. So very nice casual shirts that look smart, that you could wear as a business casual. And they had the cruise. And so I found all my polo shirts that we've gotten, plus some shirts where I've been given over time from different conventions I've been to. There's ones that we had purchased. And they're kind of all folded in half. And then folded in half, they're a stack about this tall. They're in a big stack. But then the other shirts I'm running, this has New Zealand written on it. This one's got New Zealand. I have a whole bunch of shirts that some way reflect New Zealand. And like the one I'm wearing today says, you can't buy happiness, but you can go to New Zealand, and it's pretty much the same thing. I don't know if you guys can see it. Hang on. Just making sure that the no zippies behind me. There you go. There's my shirt for today. And I've actually got this shirt, and I think it's in blue. I have it in red. I think there may be one other color. So this is one of the shirts I found. And I'm like looking at these shirts going, I remember seeing the shirts. I don't remember buying them, but I've got a whole stack of those as well. So there's probably about as many Cruise Planner shirts as there are New Zealand shirts. So I'm super excited about that. So you'll see me wearing a lot more New Zealand stuff. But it got me thinking, that, you can't buy happiness, but you can go to New Zealand and it's pretty much the same thing. And it got me thinking about and then a friend of mine who I usually have a meeting with like once a quarter, we have a catch-up call like once a quarter, said that she wouldn't be able to make it because they're moving. So, where you're moving to? She told me what about they're moving, all that. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And that got triggered though, because earlier this morning I had been on another call and I was showing somebody my business outline for my $100 million business in almost 9 years' time, because we're almost at the end of year one. And it got me thinking, I'm like, oh my gosh, have I started? Yes, I have started on that list, because I went through the mind map, and in the mind map, I've got dates where it says do this, and I've actually put dates when I've done some things. And so I have actually started putting dates on things. And so it's like, oh, thank goodness I have started doing something, but I haven't done anything for a while. What do I need to do next? And that kind of just triggered me. It's sort of like, how many out there like me that have been through stuff? You're going through stuff. You've got all this list of things you want to do. You have that someday, you've got these different dreams. Well, dreams are just dreams. They're exactly that. They're not going to turn into goals or become real until you put a date on it and turn it into a goal. When am I going to achieve that dream by? When am I going to, and changing it into a goal? A lot of people, and I learned, and there's basically 3 things Brad and I learned through his first round with cancer. The first one was laughter is the best medicine. Absolutely, without a doubt. We were always trying to find ways to be funny. We were always bantering backwards and forwards in his hospital rooms. Even in the doctor's office, when we were sitting waiting, we were bantering backwards and forwards. While I was having chemo, we were bantering backwards and forwards until they doped him up on Benadryl, and then he slept and I slept. There was nobody in the room with him. There were 2 recliners in the room. If there's nobody in the room with him, I got in the other recliner and slept. Because they had horrible visitor chairs, horrible chairs for the spouse that came with that person while they're having chemo. It was basically, there was just a board across the back of the chair. That was a single board across the back of the chair, and they were horrible, horrible chairs to sit in. So I found out from the nurses if Brad was going to be sharing a room that day while he had treatment, and if he wasn't, I went and climbed into the other recliner and went to sleep. So yes, sleep was important. But the laughter thing, we're always laughing as much as we can, as much as we could during that time. We even had the entire collection of DVDs of the original Kids Say the Darndest Things. I have to tell you, these things were filmed back in the 50s or 60s. They are hilarious. To see them now, oh my gosh, Brad and I had tears streaming down our faces when watching them. If I start laughing too hard, I forget to breathe. So then I go into this massive, excuse me one moment. Excuse me. Oh, excuse me. I go into these massive coughing fits because I forget to breathe. And my body's going, I need oxygen, and I'm forgetting to breathe. And so, yeah, I go in these massive coughing fits, which would concern Brad because he knew I wasn't breathing. And all I could hear him saying when I was having these coughing fits would be, breathe, Helen, breathe, breathe. So every now and again when I laugh that hard, I hear his voice in my head going, breathe, Helen, breathe. He did it so often. That's how often we laughed. So laughter was the best medicine. That was one of them. What was the other one that we had? I know what the third one is. It's what tonight's topic's about. The value of a hug. Now, some people go, I don't like giving hugs. I get it. I understand it. But when you're going through something like cancer, some illness like cancer or some other chronic illness and everything else, a hug can convey what you cannot say in words. When you hug, you have 2 people coming together and it's one soul talking to the other soul. And those 2 souls connect in that moment while you're having that hug. And the hug has to be at least 15 to 20 seconds long for the souls to communicate with each other. And when that hug ends, you both feel at peace. You're both at ease. There's no awkwardness anymore. And I will tell you this, people will turn up for our cancer caregivers group. I don't care. And they'd say, is this where we meet for the because we always had to stand outside and wait for them to come and open the door. Is this where the cancer care? And I'm like, yeah. And I says, are you new? They go, yep. I go, and I just go, whoof, and go, welcome, and give them a hug. And I didn't even ask their name. They've just turned up and said, we're here. This is our first time, blah, 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 blah. And they're getting hugged. And I'm just saying, welcome. And they kind of stepped back. They're a little shocked, but they're very appreciative of the hug. And then when it came time to leave, I made sure everybody got a hug before they left. Because, it was the only time I got to, once a week I got to see these people and just give them a hug, a 15 to 20 second hug that conveyed to them that I just hoped that they had a really great week and that things went a lot easier and that I'm there if they needed me, call me. I don't care what time of the night. My phone has a little, hours that it's on, the do not disturb thing. But I have certain numbers that are in my favorites that if those people need me, you call me. I don't give a shit if it's if it's 2:07 in the morning and you pick up the phone and call me, your number is allowed to come through. Yes. I have very few people. I have a very select group of people that are on that list and they know who they are and they know they can call because I've told them, you call me at 2:07. If you call me at 3:37 or 3:42, I will answer the phone. It might take me a minute to wake up, but I will answer the phone. So do not be disturbed about calling me. Please call me if you're having something going on in the middle of the night. The third thing that we learned on this is that someday never comes. We would hear of people in my caregivers group of people making all these beautiful plans to go, when this is over, we're going to go, as a family, we're going to go and do da 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 da. And there were these beautiful plans of these vacations that they love, family vacations they wanted to go on, everything else. And they never got to do them. That person in their family was taken away by cancer. And the family did get to take their vacation at a later date, but not the vacation they had planned. They had planned to go together as a family, and then one of the spouses died from cancer, and they got to take their trip later as a family, but it was a widow. It was a widow and children, no husband with them because the husband had passed away. And they were talking about, in the meetings, they were always talking about, someday when this is over, we're going to do this, we're planning to do that. And I remember with Brad, when he was in hospital for his 87 days, sitting there next to the bedside, and we were making traveling plans. We had a cruise booked to go through the Panama Canal on May of 2018. We were going to leave Fort Lauderdale, and it was going to end, and it was a 14-night cruise through the Caribbean, through the Panama Canal, coming up the West Coast there, a couple of places in Mexico, and then it was either ending in San Diego or LA. I have a feeling it was San Diego, but I can't remember. And we had that cruise booked and deposited because we were going to do that. We had a date on it. That's what cruise we were going to do. He never got to take that cruise with me. Instead, I moved that cruise from being a 14-night cruise through the Panama Canal, because for my first time out on a cruise ship without Brad, it was like, and people go, oh, but you've been on cruises without Brad before. Yes, but Brad was always a text message away. This was no Brad in the picture at all. He was gone. Yes, I'd done cruises without him, but I was always texting him, letting him know how things were going, and he'd text me each day, see how things were going, that sort of stuff. He was always a text message away. I didn't have that safety net this time. So this was solely by myself. And it was a 14-night cruise to the Panama Canal, and I was like, for the first time out since Brad passed, I did not feel comfortable doing a 14-night cruise through the Panama Canal. Basically, just about all of it was to countries I had never been to before. So they were all have been first-time things. I was not comfortable to do that for my first time out. Instead, I switched. I was on Celebrity. It was on the Millennium. And so I switched it from the Celebrity Millennium to the Celebrity Solstice, going out of Vancouver, doing 7 nights inside passage of Alaska, and ending in Seattle. The reason I chose that one is because I knew the ports, Brad, and that was where Brad and I had first started cruising, was in and out of Seattle, 7-night cruise. We were on Norwegian at the time. But the ship went to Ketchikan, Juneau, and Skagway, which are the same 3 main ports we went to. And on Norwegian, it stopped at Prince Rupert. We didn't get off that day. It was pouring with rain. So we didn't get off the ship that day. But when I was on the Solstice, it stopped in Victoria. And I just really didn't feel like getting off the ship that day. But I did get off in Ketchikan, Juneau, and Skagway. I did get off in those ports and just wandered and did a lot of the back streets that we hadn't done before, visited stuff we hadn't seen before, which was in Juneau was just as well, because there were 6 ships, and we were the 6th ship to dock that day in Juneau. And I was doing a quick math that the average number of passengers on the ship, and this was the first sailings of the season. This was the first week that Alaska had been open for sailing, and when I did it in May. And I did a quick calculation. It was like, if you take in the average number of passengers and crew that were on these ships, you were probably looking at around 18 to 20,000 people in Juneau that day. Most of them passengers, because not all the crew gets off in port. But you're probably looking about 18 to 20,000 people in Juneau on one day. Yes, some of them have gone off and done excursions and things. I caught the bus from the ship to the bus drop-off pickup area, which is at one end of Juneau, and I started walking, and the line to go into the tram car that goes up to the top of the hill, which it was a very cloudy, drizzly day. So I was like, I ain't going up in that thing. I don't want to, yes, the view above the clouds would be fantastic, but what if the lookout is clouded in? I'm not going to see anything. So I was just like, I'm not going to do it, which is just as well, because one time when I was walking back towards the bus, I walked past it, and the tram comes out and swings out across the middle of the road and stops about 30 feet off the ground across the middle of the road. And it was packed. I don't know how long it took them to get the tram cars going again, or to get those people out of that. But I was like, I'm so glad I'm not on those. But there was a very long line to go up that. And I was just like, yeah, I ain't going to do that. I got into the downtown area, and I'm walking down like the main street there, and there were people everywhere. So I was like, screw this. So I took a left, and I walked around the outer edges of Juneau, and came across some stores that people didn't know that there was There was just a few people in there, not many. The streets were crowded, not crowded. I was able to walk, but I got back to the main road and you were literally like, you could just stand there and the crowd would pick you up and move you. It was that thick of places. The Red Onion Saloon that's there, I think it's Red Onion. It's one of the famous pubs to go to when you're in Juneau. It was so packed. The doors were there and these people were standing around the outside of the door trying to get in while people are trying to get out. And I'm like, you just got to, and these people are like, and the place must have been, Brad and I went in there one time back in 2009 and yeah, it was busy and we managed to find a table to sit at. It was one of those high bar stool tables. And we're reading all the everybody signs the tables, the walls, everything. There's markers everywhere so you can leave your own mark on the tables, the chairs, the walls, whatever. Somehow a waitress found us, took our order, and somehow got it back to us. Was like, how do you walk through this? She said, we just got to hold everything high and hope we don't tip, hope we don't trip. But that was pretty packed, but nowhere near as jam-packed as it was that day that I was there and watching these people. Like, people were literally like pushing the person in front of them, trying to get in the door. And I'm like, if they can't go anywhere, you're not getting. Meanwhile, there's people trying to get out. But anyway, so so I did that trip, but I'm still going to do the Panama Canal trip. When am I going to do it? I don't know, because it's on my dream list right now. It's not on my active goal list. So with everything that happened today and finding my shirts and everything and showing people my map for my business and, all the different pieces, because there's a lot of pieces in my business with where I want it to be in 9 years' time. It was 10 years last year when I started this. But it made me go back and have a look at it afterwards and going, oh, I still have a lot of stuff on here I have to do. If I want to make this dream a reality, there's a lot of goals. Sorry, I got this spot on the monitor. I thought it was on my nose, but it was the spot on the monitor. And it's like scratching my nose on the monitor. And it got me thinking about the someday thing again. And, why do people always say, oh, someday I'm going to do this? Someday never comes. It doesn't. There's never, people are waiting. They're waiting for that perfect moment to start something. Well, guess what? That perfect moment is never going to arrive, which is why people keep saying, someday I'm going to do this. Someday. Put a date on it. Sit down right now, grab some pen and paper, sit down and make a list of all that someday stuff that you want to do and start putting dates on things. And I think people would just like to talk about, oh, someday I'm going to do this, someday I'm going to do that, just because they have a fear of failure and they also procrastinate a lot as well. Sorry, my nose is like itchy like crazy today. Drink water. I've got bad air quality here today. And I have taken a lot of breaks on the computer, but that's why my eyes are all red and watery. I can't even talk today. But they get in that procrastination. Oh, if I say I'm going to do it someday, then people will think, oh, that's really good. You've got a goal. No, you don't. You've just got a fear of failure. It truly is. If you keep saying someday, yep, someday I'm going to do this. No, put a date on it. Either put a date on it or put it on a list and put that list away. And maybe pull it out once a year and have a look and think of, what can I do? If you think it's too big, break it down into smaller goals. Like, my business plan is massive. What my business is going to look like in 9 and a bit, because 31st of July, 2033 is when I want to accomplish the goal with my business. I've got a date on it, even though it's 9 years out. I look at this plan every now and again, and I go in and I fine tune it and I add to it and I take some things off because, times change, things change. And so you are going to, and because it's a 10-year goal, there is room for adjustments in there because technology changes, ideas change, plans change. And I know that that's going to happen, but I have the basic foundation of what I want the business to look like. And I've got it broken down into smaller steps. Like, I've got the big mastermind, big plan, but then I have to click on each component to see the mind map for that particular plan. And so I've gone in there and I go through each of those things and go, well, I've already got this in place and I've got that in place. Okay, what can we work on? So we're breaking the bigger steps So by having the big overall picture, and then having the little mind maps that go off the big mind map, and you got to click a button to go see what that mind map is, I'm able to break things down into small, instead of looking at this thing. And I will tell you, the first time I showed Casey that thing, he was like, okay, explain this to me, explain that to me. What's this over here? What's this? And I had to walk through the whole thing with him. Then after I did that with him, I then went through and I broke each of those mind maps down so that, okay, here's the one for the Byron RV B&B. So that became its own little tree. Here's the plan for the travel business, and broke that into its own little mind map. So everything got broken down in little mind maps, because now it's small. I can go into each one of those and go, oh, I have all of this here. What can I do in here? And now I'm breaking them down into smaller steps. So I'm not going after, yes, I'm going after the overall picture, but I'm doing it one step at a time. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you climb the stairs? One step at a time. Some people like to rush up the stairs. I just take one step at a time. So now I can break this massive plan. I can start breaking it down into smaller steps that I can now go out and achieve, and that helps overcome the procrastination. It stops the somedayism thing and makes it now o'clock. When you set those clear goals and you go after them, put them on a vision board. I've got steps of portions of my big, massive plan as images on my vision board where I can see it every day. I actually did this really cool thing. I went and got all these postcards and I put pictures onto the postcards so I'd have the pictures instead of cutting up magazines, because I didn't have any magazines. I wasn't going to go buy any. Send all the postcards to myself. So now I have them over here. They're all arranged into the different areas of finance and business and personal and travel and everything else. And so I have those goals up in front of me so I can see them all the time. Okay, it's not directly in front of me. It's off to the side because in front of me is not all the time. And so now I have these in front of, and now I have these here where I can see them every single day, and I can start working, and I can make sure I'm working on them, because it is now o'clock. There's no better time to start than now. What about, and people will turn and say, oh, but I'm going but. So let me tell you a little story. Back in August of 2008, that's almost 16 years ago, Brad and I were sitting at home. He had been through his first surgery with cancer. So they had completely removed the infected area of cancer out of his colon and rectum. And he had the temporary ileostomy, which was our ileostomy from hell. Those that don't know what an ileostomy is, it is when they bring the small intestine, the ileo, to the surface, make a little stoma with it, and there's bags that go over it to collect the waste from your body, because they didn't want the waste going through his large colon and out through the rectum. They didn't want it doing that right then, because that area needed to heal from surgery. So they diverted this stuff. We had the ileostomy from hell. His name was Freddie. Freddie had his own personality. He took on the whole thing. So August, we're in the middle of our 4 months of hell. Our 4 months of hell started in May when we got the ileostomy, when the cancer was removed and the ileostomy was put into place, through September, when they decided they were going to do an early reversal, because usually the usual treatment is they do this, they put the ileostomy in place, you then go through your 12 rounds of chemo every other week, and then and after all of that's done and everything's clear, they then take you back and reverse the ileostomy. Not in Brad's case. Because Brad was having such a difficult, I was going to say amazing time, it wasn't amazing, having such a difficult time with this, they elected to go for an early reversal. And the area was all healed and everything else. He had to go and have all these testings done, and ultrasounds and scans and everything else to make sure that area had healed correctly. And it was healed. So we went for the early reversal. So that was our 4 months out, from May through September. And so we're in the middle of this 4 months of hell, and Brad's not working during this time. I'm only working part-time hours at the time, and thankfully had the Family Leave Medical Act that I could utilize. My boss and I became experts in the Family Leave Medical Act and how it worked. Because some people say, oh, you got to take the whole 12. No, you don't have to take the whole 12 weeks. We actually submitted timesheets every 2 weeks to say, these are the hours that I worked out of my regular 40-hour week. And the rest of the time was taken off the Family Leave Medical stuff for the hours for that week. So you can break it down by hours, or you can break it down by taking all 12 weeks at once. We worked it out. And then, and so we're sitting there and I said, look, we got to get us, and the topic came up about, we've got to find a way to make some money from home. And I'd always been in the mind of having my own business. I just wanted my own business. And so I happened to have picked up at Barnes & Noble, which was my home away from home during that time. It still is in some regards. I love going into Barnes & Noble and just walking in the door and going, such a relaxing aroma in a Barnes & Noble with new books and that. So I picked up the Entrepreneur magazine, which had the top 100 franchises listed in there. And so I said, well, let's make it. I said, let's have a look through this. Let's have a look at franchises. And he said, like, yeah, okay. So we started flipping through, and there was the vending machines and the car washes and the laundromats. And all of a sudden I went, what about travel? Now, his parents had a brick and mortar travel agency for years. And he was like, you can't do that from home. He says, you got to have an office for that. And I'm like, well, this is how the conversation went. I said, well, there's this outfit called Cruise Planners, and they've been the number one home-based travel franchise for the last 6 years. And as an FYI, they've been in that slot the whole way through. So 6 years plus, was that 16? So 22 years they've been in that number one spot for the home-based franchise, just as an FYI. Anyway, so he said, like, really? I said, yeah. And so he goes, well, what information they have there? So I read out the article. Tim was like a 2 or 3 page spread. I can't remember that, but I think I still have the magazine around somewhere in a box. Everything's in a box. And so we read that, and so we thought, okay. So we both got on the internet, on our laptops. We got on the internet and started researching cruise planners. And we called them up. We had a chat with a very nice guy called Dan, and he was brilliant. And he sent us all this information and everything else. We saw the presentation and went to this webinar, and we saw this presentation. And he's in Florida, we're in Virginia. We're doing this whole thing by phone and internet. And so we're thinking, this is a pretty good deal. And he says, okay, I'm sending you the information. I then have to leave you alone for 2 weeks to look at this information. But if you have any questions, you are allowed to contact us and ask questions. And I went, okay, because there's that period of time in the franchise where you get given all the, you do the document reveal, the reveal thing, I think it's called. And then you've got to go and do your own research and everything else, which means going to they list all the franchises there, all the current ones, all the ones who have been franchise owners in the past. And we were making phone calls. We were talking to very nice people and getting an overall picture of this. And the ones and so we also picked a majority of the ones who no longer had a franchise, and we called them up and asked why. And explained who we were and what we were doing. We wanted to know why they no longer had a franchise. Most and all of the people we talked to, they had either left on their own accord because it wasn't for them. And then there were other ones that had let the franchise go because of lack of performance. And they said, it's not our fault. They said, had we followed their system, we would have had a successful thing, but we kind of just lost interest in it. And I'm like, okay. So nobody actually got left because of bad business practices or anything like that. And I will tell you this, Brad and I are very good researchers. And so he was on a laptop, I was on a laptop, and we sat there and we researched everything, anything we could find. We were looking at cruise planner scam. We're looking at all the negative words that we could find. We could not find one bad, and we were just looking at pages 1 and 2. No, we were going down to pages 18, 19, and 20. And we still could not find one bad review about this outfit. We were like, wow. And then Dan told us that he was actually going to be out of town at a family wedding. And I says, okay, that's fine. He says, if you have any questions, just call. I says, no. I said, this is family time. We will talk on Monday. And we set up a time to talk on Monday. Sunday morning, my phone rings. And I answered, and it's Dan. I go, you're supposed to be at your family's wedding. Why are you calling me? And he turned around and says, oh, we're just sitting here at brunch. And I said, well, how was the wedding? And so I just started asking questions about the wedding. He goes, well, I was actually calling to see how you were doing. He said, I haven't heard from you over the weekend. And I said, because I told you I wasn't going to call. I said, you're at your family wedding, which is where you should be spending your time, is with your family. I said, we have a time set up tomorrow morning to talk. And he said, like, oh, you actually meant that? I went, yeah. I said, family is important. And he's like, okay. And so what are we doing this August? Now, in August, I'm working part-time hours. Brad's not working at all. We're at a stressful situation because of his cancer. He can't do chemo treatments at this point because he was reacting, but his body was reacting badly. He was getting severely dehydrated with the chemo treatments. And because in your digestive system, the liquid is absorbed in your large intestine, his body wasn't able to absorb a lot of moisture because it didn't get to his large intestine. It stayed in his small intestine, which is where all the nutrients are absorbed. So we are in high stress situations, and people turn around and say, you should never do anything when you're under duress. Yeah, well, our stress levels were beyond the moon. But what do? We agreed to buy, we ended up buying this franchise and haven't looked back since. Was it crazy? Absolutely. Was it the perfect time? Absolutely not. It was the total wrong time to be doing this, but we did it anyway. And we have made decisions like this over the years at different stress level moments, all that, through times of stress and everything else. We have done that. People just look at us and go, you guys are nuts. And I'm not. I mean, if you think about it, there's a Chinese proverb that says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. And I've got 3 quotes here for you guys. Then you got Zig Ziglar, who says, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. And Robert Kiyosaki said, your future is created by what you do today, not tomorrow. So my question to you as we start rocking out of here, it is now o'clock. It is time to stop with the some days. It is time to start whatever it is that you want to do. If you've got a dream to find you, and I can hear the excuses coming now. I can hear them. Stop right now. There are no excuses. There are no excuses. You're just making up excuses because you've got a fear of failure. You're not going to know if you're going to fail or not unless you give it a go. And you know what? You never fail anyway, because you always find ways that don't work. And so you try something different. There are lessons to be learned in failure. If you don't fail, you're not helping yourself, because failure will show you, will teach you lessons along the way. And then you also find ways of how things don't work. So you go, oh, well, maybe if I did this instead of this. So don't look at it as failure. Look at it as a learning opportunity. So don't have a fear of failure. Have a fear of a learning opportunity. That's what you're basically saying no to. And fear stands for face everything and rise. So what are you afraid of? So stop with the wishy-washy. Stop with the excuses. Sit down with a pen and paper today and start making that list of those someday things and putting dates next to them. This is something I'm not really sure if I'm going to do it. Well, this one here triggers that desire inside of me, so I'm going to start working on one. It's now o'clock. Are you ready to start your clock right now to go after your big dreams and your big goals? Start putting dates on them. Break them down into smaller steps. Mind map them if you want a mind map. And I know mind map is for creative people. The engineering minds make lists. So make your lists or make your mind map and figure out where you're going to start. And don't take too long. It's a gut instinct. Gut instinct. Are you going to do it or not? Yes or no? Very quick decision. This is my dream. Do I want to do it or not? Yes, no. That's all you have to decide. If you decide yes, you put it on this list over here or on this mind map over here, and you start working out, how do I get it started? That's your first question. So it's now o'clock. Let's get going. Have a super fantastic sparkling evening, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific. Hey, konara.